So you think Felix is gonna?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Redistricting Committee meeting this evening. And I'd like to start the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance, if you'd please stand.
Well,
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to start with the introduction of the committee members. We have Martín Valadez, Lupe Cardenas, Felix Vargas, George Dockstader, James Alford, and I'm Cindy Hayes. Did anyone have any comments at this point to present? Okay. Then I'd like to turn the meeting over to Keith Johnson.
Good evening, folks. Thank you so much for being here. This is great to see a large crowd. We've had similar public hearings, one in Pasco and one in Connell last evening. And it looks to me like this is the biggest crowd we've had so far. And so I know these are important issues that we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm the county administrator for Franklin County. I'm assigned to be the staff lead for the committee. I want to thank the members of the committee for taking their time. This has been a challenging task for all of us, but we appreciate them volunteering to take some time to help us through this process. I don't intend to spend a lot of time talking. I would prefer to hear from you, and we would prefer to hear from you. And the purpose of the meeting tonight is to listen to the community and see what kind of inputs you have. On the map on the screen is kind of a starting point. That's where the current county commissioner districts are, the map for those. You will see by the population numbers that there's some disparity between those three. And part of the state's Voting Rights Act requires us to go through a redistricting process every 10 years in conformity with the census that has recently been taken. We received census information a month and a half ago. Our IT staff, GIS staff, has put that into the map format. So the numbers reflect populations in the district that are consistent with the census data that we have received. The task of our committee is to provide recommendations to the County Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners ultimately makes a decision on what these new voting districts will look like. There are some legal parameters that we have to follow in that redistricting effort, and I'll briefly cover some of those parameters. This comes from, for anybody taking notes, RCW 29A, exact number, I don't want to misquote it here, 29A.92.050. And those parameters include the following. Each district shall be as reasonably equal in population as possible to each and every other district comprising the political subdivision. So right now you see that District 3 up there has 37,000 and change. District 1 only has 30,000 and less in District 2. So we have to balance those three districts, that those numbers are relatively equal. They don't have to be exactly to the penny equal or to the person equal, but they can't be more than probably about a 3 to 5% difference. As we will probably discuss tonight, much of the growth in Franklin County in terms of residential properties and building is going on in the northwest part of Pasco. So that boundary between District 3 and District 1 is going to be affected. And then also, I know you're aware that the county is a defendant in litigation where our district model has been challenged as one that restricts a protected class of voters, and that happens to be the Latino voting population in Franklin County. We know from demographic data received from the census and from the State Office of Financial Management that East Pasco, what's typically looked at as most of District 2 at the southern end of the county, is a heavily Latino population. And so we are not creating a district just for Latino voters, but we have to make sure that we're not reducing their ability to elect voters of their choice. That is the subject of the litigation that Franklin County is a defendant in. There are decisions that will be made by the court. Ultimately, whatever plan this committee proposes goes to the county commissioners for final approval. The county commissioners are at liberty to reject any plan of this committee and adopt their own, or they can adopt a suggestion or proposal from this committee with modifications or outright. But ultimately, that decision is to the county commissioners. That decision of the commissioners then is included in the litigation that goes before the Superior Court for the judge to make a final determination. The plaintiffs in the lawsuit, who include Franklin County citizens, but also a legal representation group out of UCLA that represents Latino voters, they will also present a proposal to the judge, and ultimately it will be up to the judge to decide what our commissioner districts look like. The purpose of these public hearings, again, is to make sure that we have listened to and heard from the community about what issues are important to them in county commissioner districts. There is a potential remedy that the plaintiffs are seeking that we move to what's called district-only voting. Right now, Franklin County, in our primary elections, votes only by district. So assuming you lived in District 2, you would vote for your candidate in the primary election, and then the two top candidates in the primary advance to the general. But Franklin County currently has voting at large in the general election. So voters in District 1 and 2 still get to vote for the potential commissioner for District 3 in the general election. That split is part of the legal issue of whether we will be able to continue with that model, or we may have to go to what's called district-only voting, where both the primary and the general election will be decided by voters only within that district. So without getting too much into the legal details, I hope that kind of gives you a bit of a high-level summary of kind of some of the things that are being talked about and considered. The second requirement, I mentioned reasonably equal in population. The second one is each district shall be reasonably compact. That just means they need to be as small as possible. Franklin County is very unique in that 80% of our population lives in the city of Pasco. So then you get north of about Burden or Sandifer or Clark Street in Pasco, the population is much more spread out than the concentration of voters in the city of Pasco. Then the next one is each district shall consist of geographically contiguous area. That means that you cannot split a district into parts and pieces. They all have to be connected geographically. To the extent feasible, the district boundary shall coincide with existing recognized natural boundaries and shall, to the extent possible, preserve existing communities of related and mutual interest. That's the kind of the key issue in the litigation, is that the allegation, at least, is that the way our current districts are divided, we have split up Latino voters, and so that reduces their ability to select the candidate of their choice. So when we look at natural boundaries, obviously we're bounded on the east and west side by the Snake and Columbia River, but Highway 395 traverses the county pretty much through the middle. That's kind of historically where the county has looked to, as you can see, split between 1 and 2. It comes over further west, up around Connell and Mesa, just to capture the right amount of numbers. Where it gets a little more difficult is actually down in the city of Pasco. And could you advance to the close-up slide there? Well, welcome Felix Vargas. Thanks, Felix, for being here. Yeah, zoom in on there you go. All right, so okay. It takes for the technology to catch up there. But as you can see on the eastern side of District 1, which is the pink colored district, it comes across 395 and then extends out into East Pasco. Also, if you'll note, District 2 has an appendage down split between District 1 and 3, just below Highway 12 and just east of 395. And that, what street is that? Yeah, the blue is 3. I tend to operate clockwise. I apologize for that. District 3, which is the blue area, has this little appendage precinct coming down below the freeway. And that just on its face looks like it's not divided amongst the right kinds of lines. It's what they refer to as splitting communities of interest. That's one of the things that the court's going to know. Then district boundaries may not be drawn or maintained in a manner that creates or perpetuates the dilution of the votes of the members of a protected class or classes. That again is a subject of the litigation that we'll have to address. And then there's some additional language on elections. I won't need to go into the detail of that. So having said that, we have met as a committee. And I say they have met as a committee. I'm not a committee member. I don't vote. I provide suggestions if I think they're helpful, but this is really a process for the benefit of the committee. They have met and have considered right now a couple of options to modify our district boundaries. So if I could have you, Michael, move to the option 1. As you can see here, this option is reflective of the population layout of Franklin County, that there's so much population concentrated in the city of Pasco that there's really no mathematical way to make 3 equal districts that don't have some portion of the city of Pasco in each district. So if you wouldn't mind zooming in on the lower end. So this, as you can see, brings that right hand or the eastern boundary of the pink District 1 boundary back to about 395. Right at the top of where 395 meets 182, there is a precinct that lies on both sides of that highway 395. So that's why you see green on both sides of the freeway there. In this district effort, we cannot split a precinct into 2 separate voting districts. So it also shows some of the fill-in around Highway 182. As I know you're all aware, as you drive through Pasco, the construction and new homes that have taken place on both sides of 182, all the way from downtown out to the river, include a great deal of growth. And we anticipate, based on the urban growth boundary of the city of Pasco that's going to take place over the next few years, there's an enormous amount of construction, new homes coming in on that northwest part of town. So That is the first option that's been presented. And then let's go to the second option. This goes back to creating a split between districts 2 and 3 throughout the north part of the county. And if you wouldn't mind zooming in on, there you go. This, as you look down again at 395 and parts east, it keeps District 1 a little further east of 395 into some of those precincts that tend to be a little more heavily Latino concentrated populations, and brings District 3 all the way down to Highway 182 on the north. These proposals are not final in and of themselves, nor have they been selected by the committee as proposals to necessarily go before the Board of Commissioners. That's kind of the purpose of the meeting tonight, is to hear from you about what's important to you in these voting districts, answer questions that we can answer, and help hopefully kind of lead you through what the county is faced with in terms of trying to recraft districts that are consistent with the state law, but also representative government and those things that we know are all constitutionally based and important to all of us, and make sure that they meet the statutory requirements so that when we go back to court with a plan for redistricting, it's acceptable to the judicial branch. So I probably prattled on long enough about opening comments. Cindy, I would assume you're ready to hear from the public, and I'll do. Yeah. Okay. Option 3, as you can see, again, it creates a very large northern district. If you want to scroll to, yeah, it's not a lot different from the other one, but it does show more of District 1 moving up the western boundary along the river, where we know a lot of the new construction is taking place.
What's the population of each one of these districts?
I can't see. Can you read those? They're noted on the map. They're within a few hundred votes or a few hundred population of each other. That shows the commissioner district, I think 31,847, if I'm reading that correctly, for District 1. That's a 1.25% deviation from the standard. The approximate number we're looking for is 32,250. And that's based on the total population of Franklin County divided by 3. So when you speak, we invite you to do a couple of things. One, please come to the microphone. We're recording this and it's being broadcast on YouTube. We want to make sure that the audience that's participating remotely has an opportunity to hear, and that the recording picks it up. I also would note that we do have a Spanish interpreter. If anybody would like this meeting interpreted in Spanish, this gentleman over here to my right, he has the headsets that you can wear with a Spanish interpretation. So you're welcome to avail yourself of that opportunity. Anything else, Cindy, or that I needed to cover, or you'd like me to?
This time we'll open for public comment. Please state your name before you begin your comment.
Good evening. Merle Booker, resident of Franklin County for a lot of years, over 60. I like my friend Mr. Heinen's suggestion, and I think it's fair and equal if the committee would consider taking the Pasco population And question, what is the Pasco population?
Approximately 80,000.
Okay. So, and spoke out like a wagon wheel, so that Pasco and Franklin County rural has equal population, so that it is not all, one of these districts is not all just city folks, whether they lived on the east side of Pasco or the west side. I think that would, in my opinion, would be an equal and fair way for all people to have a representation throughout the county. Thank you.
Quick population numbers of the city, county.
Steve, that the mic switch on the top may not be turned on. Now it's on.
Test, test. Okay. So I'm Steve Simmons. I'm from Pasco, and I just wanted to kind of do a little bit of a summary of what was talked about last night because I felt really strong that that was a good direction to be going. Two of the things I want to touch on were one, creating vertical districts, of course, that would contain, you know, the suburban, the urban, and the rural areas. And then also the fact that they had touched on how, for instance, some of these maps really kind of draw political boundaries around certain areas and maybe even certain groups, and how in the future that will create issues or problems, and we can avoid that by doing these vertical districts. So I just wanted to make everyone aware that that had been talked about last night.
So my name is Amy Davis, and I am new to politics. I actually don't like it because I have other things to do. But thank you for being here. Thank you for taking this on. Your job probably sucks. Yeah, could we see option 1, please? One of the questions that I have is why it's very convenient that this lawsuit came up during redistricting. I'm a little bit concerned that it is an outside interest group out of California that is suing our cute little county in Washington State. Are we redistricting right now from these meetings in order to beat the lawsuit and then redistrict again later to something that makes sense?
I'm happy to respond to that question. The short answer is the state law requires the county to go through a redistricting process every 10 years consistent with the annual or the census. And so in 2020 was when the census work was done. We didn't get our census data till about the middle of August.
Right.
And it takes a while to translate that into maps and so forth. So the short answer is we're redistricting right now as a legal obligation we have under state law.
Right.
The Board of County Commissioners could elect to go through a redistricting no more than every 4 years. So we could do it again in 4 years if that's the choice of the commissioners. The reason that they might choose to do so, as an example, I think this was pointed out pretty eloquently last night in our meeting, is that there is a great deal of construction going on north of 182 in Northwest Pasco. And I'm not talking a few homes, it's a few thousand homes
Right.
that they anticipate coming into that area. And so what could happen is if we made them all exactly equal right now, within a couple of years, we'd be out of balance again. And the commissioners may then be compelled to do another redistricting effort. We would like to avoid that, but that's not a primary goal of the committee or of the commissioners right now. So the litigation kind of forces our hand to consider how we have isolated or restricted Latino voters' opportunity to select a candidate of their choice. Any ethnic group or racial group is considered an entitled class under the federal voting rights law as well as the state's voting rights law. So we have to be consistent with what those requirements are. But this is the opportunity we have to update our districts based on the census data that we just received.
With all due respect, the ability for the Latino community to select a candidate based on their racial and ethnic preference is racist. And the answer to solving racism is not more racing. And I'm not trying to jump. What option one here does is tells people of the Latino community, you can choose your Latino and ethnic representative, but you have to live in East Pasco to do it. What this does is it fences them in and it traps them in an area if they have to have someone of ethnic background that they identify with. I don't see any representation for the Laotian community. I don't see the Vietnamese community. I don't see another privileged class here. And I understand that this lawsuit is driving a lot of what the decision is right now. I'm sure that this committee understands that if they punt and get us through the lawsuit, that yes, we can redistrict later, but we're still right back in the mess. We just don't have California staring at us. I don't think that's a bad idea. Obviously, a lawsuit is going to cost our county a lot of money and is going to hurt a lot of residents in our districts. So as far as option one, I think is a terrible idea. I think it tells people that you have to get on the reservation and stay there if you demand someone of your ethnic and racial background.
Lived in Franklin County for a couple of years now. Just a few comments. She did a great job. I wanted to point out that that's very true. When I went to school in the 70s, it was all about desegregation schools. What you're trying to attempt here is to segregate a class of people into a section. I heard the suggestion made of a spoken wheel. Not only is it about the segregation of ethnicity, but why did Franklin County explode in the last 10 years or so? I think we had a great community here, a great balance between rural, city, suburban. You start dividing up your maps where you have the city in one point, the rural out here, you're going to take away the beauty this county had that attracted everybody. By blending, like it was suggested in a map, the city's spoke wheel out, you get a little city, a little equal distribution of all the people. It makes more of a balance. I was born in Southern California. I watched all the farm ground get turned into asphalt, driven out. They moved to the Central Valley. They got driven out of there. We have a beautiful, beautiful ag country here. We need to find a balance. I am a sensitive. I'm first generation from my dad's side. third generation of my mother's, my grandparents, if you want to go for ethnicity, my grandfather's name was Joaquin Ramon, and my grandmother was Belbina. I've had very diverse raising, and diversity is good, and segregation is not a winning combination. Thank you.
You turned it down on purpose just because you saw me coming? I want to respond to the comment that Latinos can't get a candidate of their choice elected to office. First off, Josie Kelzer, she is the daughter of immigrants. Her maiden name was Ochoa. She's currently serving her third term as this county's treasurer. She ran in this, coincidentally, she ran in the county, probably turn that down just a little bit more, ran in the county as a Republican. Ana Ruiz Peralta, she was a first-time candidate last year, and she was also the very first Latina candidate to run for commissioner in Franklin County. She ran against a second-time candidate. She ran against a candidate, Rocky Mullen, who was also endorsed by David Cortines of La Voz Hispanic News. Coincidentally, she ran as a Democrat in a heavily conservative county. It would stand to reason that she would not win that race. Nothing to do with that ethnicity, completely to do with political leanings. On a little bit of a side note, Neva Corcoran, she's a former Democrat commissioner. She was Brad Peck's predecessor, and she ran again. Brad Peck took her out of office running as a Republican. She won the district-only primary, and then when it went to the general election where it was countywide, that's when she was lost to Brad Peck. The current district and option 2 both have a heavy population in Connell and Mesa. Option 2, thank you. Mesa and Connell are unique in that they have a very heavy concentration of Latinos. Options 1 and 3 will cut those two communities out of their brothers and sisters in East Pasco. That will disenfranchise those voters. I don't think that's right. I want to know the truth. Is this really about protecting the Latinos, or is it about empowering the Democrat Party? Because options 1 and 3 specifically look like they're specifically driven to empower the Democrat Party. And if that's the case, that's wrong to use ethnicity as a driving force in politics. And whoever's got that idea, shame on them.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James Jimenez. I'm glad to see some of these faces on this board here. Makes me happy. I am born in Pasco, raised out in the North Franklin, went to Pasco High. So every aspect of Franklin County is my home, both the city and out in the country. I personally don't like any of these maps. The bottom line is fair, equitable representation, and I don't see it. one of the suggestions that was given to me a few days ago and I mentioned tonight is going from the river, go all the way to the North County. Every commissioner gets a little bit of the city, a little bit of the country. That to me is fair and equitable representation. Thank you.
My name is Lanny Hayes, and I'm a longtime resident of Franklin County. Is the state law in effect now, or is it in 2023 that has to do with this Rayfield deal? Loopy, we were talking.
Since 2018 is when the law passed.
Some parts are active from 2018, but some parts of that law become active in 2023. So I think I have it in here, but anyway, so that's to answer that question. But I will keep my answer to that question a little better than I can, so.
Okay, if you do that later, because it's important if it's all in effect or not. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, maybe we can get clarification on the date that the law became effective. My understanding is it became effective in 2018 when it was passed by the legislature and signed by the governor.
That's my understanding. I will have to get clarification
Yeah.
if that's not the right answer. My understanding was it was passed in 2018.
If you guys look under 2992.050, it has a retroactive application, making anything we're doing retroactive back to January 16, 2019, based on the law that was passed in 2018. There is a subsection effective in January 1 of 2023 that involves all voluntary changes to an electoral system regarding the new elections when redistricting happens, which isn't, I think, as applicable to the situation that we're in right now.
Thank you, panelists, for this opportunity again. You've seen me. This is the third night that I've been. This means quite a bit to me. This has been my county for 40 years. And I feel very strongly that we have an opportunity here that, would you show the zoomed in version of this, please? I think we have an opportunity here that if we are careful about it, that it would make it so that we don't come upon this same situation, 2 or 3 years from now. And so this map, I think, is going to be very ineffective in what we're trying to do, because as a developer in the county that works in town a lot, and as a cattle rancher that works in North County here, almost all of the growth that is going to happen in the next 3 years in Pasco, 3 to 6 years in Pasco, is going to happen in District 2, that purple area up to the left. And I think like Mr. Booker and a few others have said, if we did something like a linear district or a wagon wheel look, that it would make it where that we have multiple representatives for the farming community as well as in town. And it would also help, it would make us not get out of whack quite so fast as growth happens, almost 100% of it to the north. There's going to be very little growth that happens out to the east, and obviously nothing can happen to the south. So almost all of our growth is going to happen in District 2. And in the next 3 years, if we add 2,000 to 3,000 homes in the next, say, 5 years, 3,000 homes is going to equate to, 8 to 10,000 residents. And so very rapidly, we would be out of whack as a population and again, be outside of what the parameters of the state law has been, that we have to stay inside of the districts need to be fairly uniform. So if we were to make some type of linear or wagon wheel looking districts, I think it would be more fair representation if our commissioners had their constituents both in town as well as in the county. I think that would be a good route to go. And like several people have pointed out, if we draw a circle around an area, not only, I mean, in the short term, it may do what the goal seems to be, is to get a Latino elected. That appears to be the goal, but it also boxes people in, and it puts them, when you put people inside of a box, we are back to segregating instead of desegregating. And I think that it's dangerous to segregate people. Thank you.
I just want to clarify his question. I found it on RCW 29876.010. It talks about the counties, municipal corporations, special purpose districts, effective until January 1, 2023. So they have to do this. They have to be, but within 45 days, or receive the federal decennial census information application, special local need areas. This has to be done. So that's what we're doing. The redistricting, which is B down below. So that's what we're doing. But it's 45 days, and that's what's in the RCW. So. Okay, I'll give RCW 29A.76.1.010. So that's what it talks about. It talks about what the counties have to do and by what date. So, and it talks about that's what it's, and on the bottom, that's what we're doing. They all each has to be, do what we're trying to do, the redistricting, and they come up with a plan, the criteria, and they also the counties have to choose a board members like what we're doing to do this, to the redistrict. So that's what that says. So, okay, so again, 29A.76.0110.
He's saying that that's the current law effective until 2023, not active in 2023. So the RCW that says for all county municipal corporations and special districts, which is effective until January 1, 2023, is RCW 29A.76.010. And that is the one with which we are currently operating under.
Just might point out a lower section of that same law, paragraph 3, it says, except as otherwise provided, counties that prepare a plan for redistricting must be done by December 31st, 2021, if the jurisdiction is scheduled to elect members to its governing body in 2022. So that would be the normal case. But the fact that we have to present a plan to the court under the redistricting lawsuit that's taking place, we're on a little shorter time frame than that while we're trying to get that done very rapidly.
I think everybody knows who I am, but I'm Kurt Didier.
I don't. Would you identify yourself?
Pardon?
Please identify yourself.
I said Kurt Didier. I said pretty much everybody knows who I am, but I'm Kurt Didier. Okay. Anyway,
Take the
I got
marbles out of his mouth.
a number of questions and statements. Okay. Number one, the way our districts are today, if a Latino couldn't get voted in because it contains East, Pasco, Mesa, Connell, which I think if you check your records is probably 70% Latino, flat out, So what I see in your proposals here, 1 and 3, is what the national level considers gerrymandering. changing districts and changing lines based on either politic group or ethnic groups. It ain't based on anything else, because that's what you're doing, like some of the other people have stated and everything else. Okay? What previous people stated, drawing the line straight up to where there's equal population of Pasco and the county north is probably the best, because like you say, he said, as the growth heads north, it's going to stay more equal than redoing this in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 2 years, whatever it may be, depending on where that population shifts. Okay? Next point I want to make is I want to know how many counties in this state vote in the general by district alone and not general like we do. Is it a large number, or is there just a few? Why are we thinking about changing the system we've had for up 10 years to something that, if you look at District 2, we looked up District 2, the voting numbers are low in that district, flat out, compared to the other two, both in the primary and the general. They're lower than the other ones. Now, there's got to be a reason for that, either unregistered voters compared to the population. So then you're wanting to put a person in office in that area to dictate the whole county that their whole numbers either are not registered voters or don't get out and vote. And I don't feel that's right. Plain and simple, that's not right. Because you're talking, what's your budget, Keith? 96 million? Okay, I got a question. I've been just eating at me for weeks now. How much of that $96 million, and I'm not talking about salaries and pensions and all that, how much is that spent inside Pasco city limits?
Approximately, probably 30–40%.
30–40%. So you want two people inside of Pasco dictating 60% of our budget that really don't have nothing to do with our budget, meaning outside where you want to have one district. That's not right either. You're putting two people totally in charge of 60% of our budget that I know one commissioner right now that probably don't get outside the Pasco city limits in the last 4 years he's been in office. And he's telling me how he's going to spend my taxpayers' dollars and where he's going to put them and how he's going to put them. It's not right. Okay? That was one other thing I was really upset about, but I think I forgot it by now. So I'm going to let that one go until I remember, right? All right.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening, and thank you guys for coming out here to Mesa tonight. So I'm Jim Jacobs. I'm the superintendent of the North Franklin School District. Most of these folks, maybe minus one or two, gave me the blessing of being able to lead our school district for the last several years. I've actually been a member of the school district for 25 years and lived out in Eltopia for 21 of those years. As both the superintendent and also a commissioner of Fire District 5, the Eltopia Fire District, my experience is that when it comes to public service agencies like a school district or a fire district, that quite often our agencies are at the whim of population dense centers like the big city of Pasco. When it comes to infrastructure or county services, a lot of times we take backseat to the population center. So the pandemic and our shutdown last year really exacerbated that, and I think a lot of that stuff came to light even more so throughout that situation. Situations like students not having internet, situations like students who have mental health issues not having ready access to mental health services. As a fire district, I know that we struggle with communication in a rural area, and when we build infrastructure for communication, we build it based on a population dense, short throw communication frequencies, things like that. All of those things are always difficult for a rural community and rural public agency to deal with. And I think that any option that you choose that exacerbates that natural inclination with also a dilution of our representation will make it even worse. And for my 340 employees and my thousands of clients that I serve as a superintendent, I'm concerned about that. So thank you, guys.
So if I may ask, what is your suggestion with the maps that you see there?
To be dead honest with you, I've got so many provocative and high-profile issues on my plate right now, I haven't had time to really research that. I just wanted you to know what would concern me
Okay, thank you.
versus the solutions. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Hawkins. I've lived in North Franklin County, Basin City most of my life. This might be a stupid question, but has the committee considered 3 vertical districts as an option?
I would just answer that we have not developed a map that looks like that yet, but based on the input that we received at the last couple of public hearings, particularly last night in Connell and this one tonight, I think that's prudent for us to do that. But yeah, these are beginning discussion topic options. These are not final or the only options. And I can't tell you at this point that any of these options are going to end up being brought to the county commissioners. So the purpose of our meeting tonight is to get input, and it's clear that at least most of the folks in this crowd would like to see as you described, a wagon wheel type division of. So we will put that into a map form and let the committee take a look at it.
Awesome. Follow-up question to that is, so I know there's a meeting in Connell, there's this one tonight. Has there been similar meetings like this in the city of Pasco? Or will there be?
We had one in the city of Pasco Tuesday evening. And based on some comments received at that meeting, we're looking at trying to do an additional one on the east side of Pasco.
Any comments from the committee members about a vertical? If you've, I'm just curious if anybody's thought about it or.
I just want to address that. This option 3 that you're seeing is my attempt to implement. Okay, now we're on. This option 3 is my attempt to draw in map form and implement that we call a following the rivers or going up either side of the rivers. And so you can see the population numbers there, they're pretty equal. And I can only, if we're starting from the central population on either side of Pasco and working upwards, this is the best we can come up with right now on that.
So I would say that this has nothing at all that looks like a vertical.
It can be,
The challenge is once you get north of the city limits of Pasco, the population concentration changes so dramatically that where you split it within the city, particularly with regard to the east side of Pasco, makes it very problematic to satisfy the Latino representation that's required. But yeah, I agree. If you look at that, and that's a reflection of the population of Franklin County.
I would like to throw in as a committee member one thing. And like Keith said, hopefully maybe they can come together with a map that makes sense. The issue with the committee that we've had is that we've been asked to draw a map that represents not only just the population balance, like you guys see, we're shooting for that 32,250 number, but that we should also have these boundaries be reasonably compact. And in addition to that, these other things that they threw in this kind of an idiotic law. But I guess if anyone, and maybe Keith and them will be able to work on it, you can't split a precinct. You can't split the area. It has to be contiguous from south to north. And it has to have the appearance or realistically be whatever they would determine reasonably compact. And an analogy I was given was that if in North County, South County, wherever you wanted, if you dropped in a skyscraper in one of the precincts that had 30,000 people living in it, that in itself, balanced against the rest of the county, would probably be its own district based on the way the state law was written. Unfortunately, it was a poorly written law that was passed. But if anyone has comments as to specifically how to maintain that north to south and that blend where we have precincts and the population balanced, the biggest thing is that we're on a deadline, as far as I understand it, to produce something in this lawsuit to where it adheres to the state law as much as possible so that it can be legitimately considered. And that's what we hope to do.
Thank you. What is that deadline?
I just want to follow up on that explanation because I don't think it's really well understood. We have a criteria that we have to abide by, and that is laid out by the 2018 Voters Right Act by the state of Washington. And that is the criteria that he's laid out. But there's one element that you did mention that is really important, and that's what people in the courtroom will focus on, and that is that district boundaries may have to preserve existing communities of related or mutual interest. And the case will be made that people who live in central Pasco have little of mutual or related interests with people who live out in the outlying areas, in the rural areas. And they'll point to voting patterns in the past, be they Republican or Democrat. That is not the issue. Just the way they vote is differently, and that's what will be pointed out. So if we come up with maps that violate this particular provision of the law, then it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge in court. So we need to. And the other point I would make, or to your earlier question about, have you thought about vertical lines and maps? Really, if you look at the current districting, the current lines as they're put on the map, that is vertical. Those are vertical lines.
No, it's not.
Yeah, well, they come pretty close. People will look at that and they'll say, those are north-south lines. I'm not. I don't want
to go back to the current districts.
No. I'm talking the current district.
I know. I'd like to see it.
Yeah. And you'll see that every district dips into the central part of Pasco. So anyway, I'm not going to debate you on this. I'm saying that this is what the attorneys will look at and argue. They will say that historically, Central Pasco has been carved up into 3 districts, and that has disenfranchised or made it difficult for people in Central Pasco as a homogeneous group to be able to elect a candidate of their choice. And that is discrimination under the law, both under state law and federal law. That is the case. That's what convinced Yakima to settle. They didn't want to go through another multi-million-dollar lawsuit, which the city lost before. They saw the writing on the wall. They said, we're not going down that road again. We know that the cards are stacked in such and such a way. We're not going to do it. And let's cut a deal with the other side and let's have district-based elections. The lawyers will be arguing that the current districting as set up it violates the law. We're trying to come up with options here that make it possible for both sides to say, yeah, we can agree to that. That's a challenge for us with your input.
And I agree. It is a challenge, and I do appreciate your work as a committee to do that. I would be curious, what are the specific communities you see that can't be split up? Are we just talking about Central Pasco can't be split up, or what? If you were going to draw a map of communities that can't be split up, what would that look like for you?
Well, it isn't what I think. That's important, really, and it doesn't matter. It's what the people think that matters to me. I want to hear from them, and then at the end of the day, say, okay, based on what I've heard, based on our reading of the law and the criteria, here are some options that we should present to the commissioners. The commissioners themselves will decide which ones they want to go with. They may throw them all out and say, you guys did a lousy job. Of course, you only had less than a month to do your work, but that's beside the point. You didn't complete it, and we're going to do it ourselves. Again, the important thing is to hear from the citizens here. And I'm just dismayed that having heard for several nights that there's a lot of Latinos living in the rural areas. I don't see any Latinos out there with except for maybe a couple. So I don't know where the Latinos in rural Franklin County are. They're not showing up at meetings.
Well, that's why I was curious about a meeting in Pasco, if there had been one, if there were going to be future ones. And also, there was mention a deadline. What is that deadline?
So Keith, referring to the deadline, when does Judge Swanberg want something from Franklin County before they move forward?
Yeah, up until a couple of days ago, we thought it was November 8th was the deadline, but because the judge reversed the decision on summary judgment that had been decided back in September, that gives us a little more time. So we're still looking probably by mid to end of November before the county commissioners actually make a decision.
And last question, or did you have a comment?
No,
Go
I was
ahead.
going to answer your question. Vertical districts will be considered,
Awesome.
okay?
Thank you.
Whether they're viable or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But they're sure as hell going to be considered.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
And one other comment, just so for people, when you read the RCW, you'll see it. It stands out clear as day. But when we're talking about the Latino class, it's specifically in the law. It's a group of people that they refer to as protected class, meaning a class of voters who are members of a race, color, or language minority group, as the class is referenced and defined in the Federal Voting Rights Act, and where they have found historical polarized voting, which means there's voting in which there is a difference as defined in case law regarding enforcement of the Federal Voting Rights Act in choice of the candidates or other electoral choices that are preferred by voters in a protected class, and the choice of candidates and electoral choices that are preferred by the rest of the electorate. So the language is, you gotta remember, we're working with real horrible language to begin with. And unfortunately, it's a lot to take, to remedy the issue that we're dealing with. And like George had said, we're gonna come up with something, whether or not it's viable, whether or not the judge sees it the way we do. That's what we'll find out.
Yeah. One last question, hopefully. Future meetings, where are those publicized? Where are they announced? I found about this one because I saw it on Facebook. What is the county doing to publicize these or not? Or if you're going to do one in Pasco, I want to know about it. How am I going to find out about it? Besides the graphic, where else is?
Oh. We post. The Franklin County Graphic is in fact the legal newspaper for Franklin County, so we do post it there. We knew that this was important to the community, so we also posted it in the Tri-City Herald. We posted it in the Hispanic newspaper. We posted or sent out a media announcement to all local media channels to put it on their media feeds. It is on our county Facebook page. And we do now have a email service. If you would like to sign up for, we will send you announcements of important meetings and things through email.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yes, last time, I promise. Can we go to slide 7, I believe, that has the demographics?
I have to apologize. I tried to refresh that on this slide and it didn't come up. I'll see if it happens again. But if it doesn't come up this time, I can post that information tomorrow. But
I had a question about the lawsuit and the fact that we had come to an agreement and then we had decided against the agreement, and now here we are with X number of days. Does anybody know what the agreement was in the lawsuit, please?
Yeah, the attorneys that were representing Franklin County at the time submitted a motion, or excuse me, a document to the court that suggested that we acknowledged that there was racially diverse voting occurring in Franklin County, which was based on on information that a professional demographer put together over the last several elections. That was not clearly articulated to the Board of County Commissioners, and so 2 of the commissioners objected to that acknowledgement or that stipulation and asked that the court reconsider that matter. The court reconsidered it, reversed their ruling on which was a summary judgment motion. And a summary judgment just means there's enough evidence to throw this out or enough evidence to move it forward, go to trial. So that kind of moves us back to square one, as if we're at the beginning phase of the litigation where the plaintiffs have filed the lawsuit and the county now has to respond to that.
So as a member of a parent-teacher group in North Franklin County, we have a hard time getting a certain demographic to meetings, to participate in parent meetings, to participate in events. And just for the sake of exercise, how many people here identify as Latino, Central American? I've got 3 out of 60.
Right.
The Latino population in North Franklin County, as far as I have interacted with, and again, this is a 60 to 70% student Latino demographic, they have different priorities. And what we're seeing here is they're not coming out to meetings for whatever reason. You're not going to hear their voice, whether they, and I'm assuming, please don't paint me as racist, whether one of them is still working while the other one is at home with their children. A lot of them could still be working. It is still harvest time. And I don't, for one, feel bad that they don't show up, because I don't expect them to work their tails off all day long and then have to come in here and fight for what they think they should and shouldn't have. They're not going to be here. And the fact that we're holding a meeting to get more votes for this demographic, treating them differently, is against their American dream. They're out here working for their families, for their children, and we're painting them into a box. Now, the county, anyone who is short plotted property, the county is very good at drawing lines. The county is expert at it. And the fact that we have to sit here and be told that vertical lines aren't viable. If you have a child that is growing taller and not wider, you don't order wider clothing. You go vertical, folks. From a mom standpoint, all of the growth is going north. There's nowhere to go. You've got a river. We're blocked in east-west. Why is this a difficult concept?
I would just point out that at the first meeting, public hearing we had in Pasco at the Hample Center, there were a considerable number of Latino speakers. In fact, we had as many Latino speakers as non-Latino speakers. I predict that when another public hearing is held in Central Pasco, we'll have a greater number of them. So don't draw any conclusions from the fact that you have 1 or 2 Latinos here tonight, that that's representative throughout the county, because it isn't.
Ismael Mendoza, political science students at CVC. So I would like to share a little bit of my experience as a Mexican. And well, I understand that there's this perception, the Hispanic, the Mexicans, in my case at least, don't care about what's going on. But there's a language barrier to begin with, that even though you see a lot of citizens coming to school, maybe at their house, their first language is Espanol. And I feel grateful that I'm able to communicate and that I'm able to understand what's going on. But please understand that my community in reality feels intimidated for so many reasons. And maybe they're not here right now, but I know you've seen them working. And especially in Pasco, there's this belief that parents don't care about their children's grades. They don't come to the PTA meetings. And I'm getting a little emotional because I have experienced this, where you try to go to the PTA meeting and everything's in English. And it's intimidating. It feels a little annihilated, if you want to say it this way, because you're definitely put in a separate box and you're not allowed to do your input because you're afraid or you're just not able to communicate. Please don't think that they don't care. It's just this is what I have learned in my 2 years as a political aficionado, you can say, or lover. How can you know what you don't know? Maybe the Hispanic community doesn't really know the treasure that it is to be here. But once they get to see the difference, when they get to see their actual people that they choose to be elected, maybe then you can see the difference and then maybe they will show up. But trust me, I feel like the Hispanics are a force that you trust, because I know you trust us with the fields. I know you trust us with the shovels. I know you trust us with the blower. I guess give us a chance. That's all I'm asking. Don't judge them. They just don't know where they're missing. And they just don't understand that they need to be here right now. But they will. And they will wake up and they just need to be reached, because nobody reached for me. I had to go by myself to school. I have to go to classes. Nobody come to my house. So maybe we need to do that. And I guess that's all I got to say. Thank you.
I'm not sure where you live. You and your family are welcome at the Mesa PTA meetings. We will make language accommodations because it's open to everyone and we want more participation.
My name is Jim Follansby. I live out there in District 2, out in the middle of it. And if you could put up the number 1, option 1, please. Okay, let's take a look at this. You've got one district here, and this. How in the world can you look at this and say this is compact? I mean, that's not compact. These guys are overly compact. Seems to me that the version of compact as you can be is 30%, 33%, 33%. So how do you get equal population in that? If you could go to the, zoom in on the, that one. Yes, please, thank you. We've talked about vertical districts. You pick a couple points here, one here, one over here. And as you project this we're talking about the vertical option. As you go up, you get a lot of people in here, here, and here. So you try and make that as equal as you can in population. And as you go on out, you keep the ratio as best you can. I tried to do this today. My wife was looking at trying to get let's take a look at precincts and see what the population is in each one of those precincts. And maybe we could see how you could do something like this rather than straight lines. Straight lines don't make too much sense, but at least to give you a general idea of what to do. And so if you could get the population by precinct, we kind of know where precincts are now, and draw these lines up and maybe a little jagged going up, but try and make it as equal as possible as you go on up. The beauty of this is that you get urban interests down here in the south end for all three of them. As you go up, you get into more suburban interests, then you get into rural farming, and you get into some rural areas up in Colotus and Connell. But I think that's a way of making it equal. And you can make that, you can't get much more compact than 30% 33% in all of them. So I think option one, option two miserably fail at that. And I'd like to see a little more common sense in it. Thank you.
My name is Kent McMullen. I'm nearing 61 years in Franklin County. I've been in agriculture my entire life. I am a resident now because I sold my farm operation a few years ago, and I've been acting as an irrigation manager for a large farm since. I'm a resident of District 1. There are a lot of farmers that live in District 1 that I know from having lived out in the basin here and farmed. And I can assure you that with strategy, if there's concern about agricultural representation, all of us have an interest in representing agriculture and have experience in agriculture. And not just necessarily agriculture, we have experience in business, which is important to understand the regulatory environment and all the burdens that are put before businesses. So I don't know that it's necessary to wheel spoke, because I think there is can be representation, but the whole problem is with the state law. They have conflicting issues that lead to problems. Having not disenfranchising a population is in conflict with having uniformity in distribution of the county. And, you know, the whole precept of the law is incorrect. That's the whole problem. This county has lost its autonomy to some extent in not having worked on this issue maybe at an earlier juncture. But if this is going before the Board of Commissioners and they make the final decision, it's still ultimately going to be decided by a court. And therein lies the problem if the law as it's written is applied, because the law to me is nonsensical. Thank you.
Is there any further comment from anyone?
We asked the question, if you could tell us the last couple of nights, the percentage of our population is Latino, percentage of our population is Caucasian. I understand because Latino is more than 50%. I got over Latino Hispanic is just over 50%, about 65%. Non-Hispanic, I remember, 52,445 Hispanic. I don't know whether this was 2020, 2019, we know that about 96,749 people. Of those Hispanic, or of those 96,749, 44,304 are non-Hispanic, 37,225 are white. Of those citizens, 72.2% are non-citizens, 27.8% are citizens. Education and healthcare need, the workforce of 73.3%, and agriculture 15.5%. So the way I look at it is your agriculture, which covers huge amount of square footage or square miles, that using this map here doesn't represent a good enough. I mean, you've got running this loose over there, below this completely different farming up down by Mesa, or up by Newton, or down by Snake River. We farm a lot of acres in the county, and it's different everywhere we go. We run into a lot of different people, and I've heard this Hispanic community of damn good people.
The protected class is anything that is recognized under the federal civil rights statutes. It's going to, I mean, obviously, we're talking about a racial issue here in Franklin County, but it could be ethnicity, nationality, it could be gender, it could be, there's a number of protected classes. Yes. Yes. Well, that's, please understand that we're not advocating or defending state law or federal law and how it's done. But the reality of it is, farmers as a group are not a protected class under the Constitution. Should they be? That's up to other people to decide. But, I'm sorry? Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's not the point of the argument. In civil rights law, racially based things are protected. Again, that's a yeah. Like I said, I'm not defending a particular philosophy here. It's just telling you what reality is in terms of the state law.
I've been here 47 years. One of my confusions is we talk about the Latino community as if all they do is work in agriculture. But I have many of friends that are third, fourth, fifth generation Latino. They're teachers, they're doctors. They have just the capability as everybody's standing here to do what we're doing. Everybody's making excuses for somebody because of color. I don't understand that representation. And I mean, just like everybody else works, I work hard, they work hard. Finding out about this meeting, you want to help the Latino community that doesn't understand, well, get off your butts and go down there and start telling them, hey, we're going to have a meeting that helps you. Well, I mean, I found out like an hour and a half ago to get here. But we keep talking about this Latino community. You know, we all are Americans, every single one of us, not just the Latino community. And they're all hard workers. I mean, I can name thousands of them. And we all do our job. But don't make excuses because they're Latino. Thanks.
One more quick statement. I want to expand on Mr. Valman's comment, or his comment on his question. This is the third night in a row that question has been asked. A third night in a row that preparations were not made to answer those questions. You should have known by now that question was going to get asked again. And I want to commend Matt back there for actually showing up prepared, doing the job that should have been done by our paid representatives. Thank you.
I wonder if I can ask a question, and that is, how many people here tonight live here in Mesa, or Mesa? So a little over a handful. Thank you. No, I asked the question because 3 nights that we've had public hearings, I keep seeing the same, we have seen the same group of people show up. And there's nothing to say that they shouldn't or they can't. But it's always helpful to have people from that local community show up in force, as opposed to the same group of speakers show up at every event. Yeah.
Ask that you please come to the microphone.
I'm Shane Didier. My only question was if you guys are going to have a meeting in Eltopia, because the reason we're here is because this is the closest place that you guys are having a meeting. Okay, that was my only question. So that's why we're here in Mesa. Thanks.
I'm Case Vandermeulen, and I live in Mesa. Question for the committee. What is your goal? Is it a goal to make sure you don't get through a lawsuit, or is it to make it fair and right for the population?
My position on this committee is to come up with 3 or 4 alternatives that are fair for the whole county and present them to the county commissioners and have them make their choice. As far as I'm concerned, that's the lawsuit.
Thank you.
I think, thank you. As further you asked the question, I think I go with that too. Plus, we have to stay with the population. That's what the law says, population, to answer your question. It's one of those criteria, and we have to take into account the other agenda that you might say is there. So that's the goal. We're supposed to provide, hopefully, some direction for the county commissioner. So hopefully that's one, my goals, keep it honest, straight to where it's beneficial to everybody.
I think the other goal of me, at least being on the committee, is that if we do through lawsuit or settlement or whatever way it is, if they can say that the county went through a legitimate process where everyone was invited to comment and we worked on this and we tried to stay within what the law prescribed, this is what we came up with. It's our unique county. This is what we feel as people from the county who made the comments and the people from the county who are on the committee. And then maybe the judge in good faith says, if you went with what the redistricting committee and all of the people who came and made the comments, if you picked that map as commissioners, then maybe that gives them standing. Maybe that gives them something to work with in the lawsuit situation. And that's my goal, is we get everyone's feedback. We work within the parameters as vaguely as they're written, and hopefully we have something that does provide us the representation that we deserve.
Okay, thank you. I guess one more comment. I mean, it's not an easy task because there's conflicting rules or conflicting. So at some point in time, somebody can sue you anytime because there's something that doesn't go right, correct?
Yeah.
I would just add a comment that in my view, we should not even think of a lawsuit. We should think about fulfilling the mandate that the commissioners laid out for this committee to review the current census data, to look at the current map, see what changes need to be made to the map, given the criteria we have in the law, conduct public hearings, get the input from the citizens, and put some ideas, proposals together for the commissioners to review. I think that's plain and simple. There's no other element that should come into the thought process for us, including the lawsuit.
And as far as the mandate for protected parts of the community, how strong are you going to take that in consideration?
So the state law says that you can't draw lines that would dilute or break apart what is identified as a protected class or community. That's what it says. But how you can pull those precincts together and still find a population balance in the county, that's the trick.
Yeah, because there's a lot of Hispanics in North Franklin County.
Yeah, correct.
just as well.
Colonial, Mesa, yeah, no, and Keith, do you have the map that shows percentage of Hispanic population by census block handy on your
Again,
PowerPoint?
I attempted to refresh that today and it didn't come up, and I really apologize to the public because I wanted to see that too.
Yeah,
I will
because
post it
it's
tomorrow
helpful to
as soon
see.
as I can.
Obviously, the Hispanic community can exist in a census block in excess of 75% in a huge portion of the precincts. So I think that if you think of the law and trying to work around East Pasco only as splitting up a protected class, you can't draw very many lines and not say that you're trying to split up or, reduce a protected class. So I think without that data, which we didn't get until yesterday, Mike?
Yes.
So,
I wasn't able to post it until yesterday, and I'll post it again as a printable on the redistricting
I have it.
site.
I have it. I just want to.
And I live in Pasco and farm out in, even the current map is putting a city against rural anyway, and I too do think that there should be a vertical way of redistricting all the districts, and that I'm not sure why, especially in these times that you guys are trying to put the city against rural, you guys should be thinking about bringing the community together instead of splitting it all apart.
So my name's Stacy Nupton, lifelong resident. Was asked by numerous people to make a comment, and I think my voice has been heard, but I thought I'd make sure I got up here and said it. But I think what we got is a fundamental problem. And I know Ted and I have been to DC a lot of times together, and it's not a Latino Caucasian problem. We got to be together. We got to be uniform. We got to fight together. And if we keep going on this path of placating different groups, our voice keeps getting diluted more and more and more. Our voice is already worthless in Olympia. It's pretty worthless in DC. And you just go back there and you bang your head against the wall. And here we are trying to placate the group that's taken away from our country. I know that doesn't help with you drawing lines, but it's so frustrating to watch. It's so frustrating to fight. And we got to do something more equitable and have our whole county as one team, one unit, and be able to go to Olympia and fight. But if we keep being diverse, it's going to turn into what the rest of the country is turning into. That's my opinion.
Can I ask one more question? How long has the committee been working on this?
2 weeks so far. I think that's what's been 2 weeks. We're supposed to get together a long time ago, but never happened. So 2.5 weeks, I think that's what or 3 weeks. It depends. We met 2 times, and then the last 3 meetings that we have. So with this, so okay.
So yeah.
Okay, and how long has this been going on as far as knowing that we have to redistrict?
A long time. The litigation is what prevented our committee from being able to gather and start actually analyzing data. We didn't get the census data until the middle of August, so we only had it in about 6 weeks. But in the last couple of weeks, we've had this committee starting to take a look at that, and
But you've had the data since August,
That's when the census data was released to us, yes.
and these guys have not got it 2 days ago?
No, they've had it for,
We got that yesterday.
yeah. It
I
takes a
think that's a
while
good question to ask the commissioners, frankly, because they've known about this issue since 2016 and didn't really make a decision to name a committee until just recently.
Okay.
Correct, yeah, we were asked to be on the committee back in May, and then due to the lawsuit and some things, it got paused, and then just reactivated a couple weeks ago.
And I guess my question as far as the court case, can't you ask for a little time because you got to have an appropriate process to go through this?
Due to the reversal, I think it got sped up quicker than it would be ideal.
The initial ruling on the summary judgment motion put us under a different time frame than where we are now.
Yeah, sure.
The judge's decision this week is going to give us a little more time.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and offer a little bit of compassion for our commissioners and remind everybody that they were working on redistricting before the COVID mandates hit and it was all shut down. We had several, they had been meeting several times. They had 5 different maps, I believe it was, and they were starting to conduct public meetings at that time before the COVID crisis occurred and everything was shut down. So this could have been done about 1.5 years ago had it not been for the COVID crisis. And they got to work on it as soon as they got back into the offices, started talking about forming this committee, and it was decided to wait for the census so that they could do a good job and not have to be rushed.
There's no further vote? If there's no further comment, the meeting's adjourned.
Thank you all for being here tonight. It really helps.